So it's good to have a merry heart, and to have a broken spirit is not so good. And one of the ways that we have a broken spirit is because we take things personally, right? Let's imagine that your cat was playing on the table, and the cat knocks over the glass, and water spills all over the table. Why is it that it's water that's all over the table? Okay, so cat spilled it over. Well, you come walking along at a later time, and you knock into the table. You weren't paying attention. You knock into the table, and the cup on the table spills over, and there's coffee all over the table. Why is it that there's coffee all over the table? All right, you knock the table, and that spilled out. Okay, let's say that you're a little bit closer to Jamaica than here, and that big 7.4 rumbler comes through, and everything goes shaking, quaking, and the glass falls over, and then there's milk all over the table. Why is it that there's milk all over the table? Oh, all right. We got a little bit mixed. So because of the earthquake, or because there was milk in the glass? Or you go walking along and you trip, and the glass in your hand comes flying out, and there's grape juice all over the carpet. Why is it it's grape juice that's all over the carpet? All right, because there was grape juice in the glass. If the cat had been there and there was no water in the cup, would there be water all over the table? No. And if you knocked into the table and there was no coffee in the cup, would there end up being coffee all over the table? No. And if the earthquake had come and there was no milk in the cup, would there end up being milk all over the table? No. And if you had tripped with an empty glass, would there be grape juice all over the... No, there wouldn't be. Right? So if someone says something to you, if they do so in a way that is hurtful, it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them, because it couldn't come out of them if it weren't in them. That's right. What is inside comes spilling out, and what comes from the inside out comes from the own individual, not you. So if they put your name to it and they do some angry whatever, well, it's not about you, it's about them. Right? If I get angry with you and upset and so on, and I tell you you're this, that, and the other thing, is that your problem or is it my problem? That's my problem, right? I think I've got a problem with you, but the problem is my problem with you is my problem, right? You ever heard somebody say, I've got a problem with you? Well, what did they just start saying? I've got a problem, right? So it's their problem. If it's coming at you, right, just like the cup that spilled over, it doesn't matter what it was that spilled the cup over. What came out of the cup came out of the cup, because that's what was in there. And that's what we learn when Jesus tells us in Luke 6:45, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And Solomon says it this way in Proverbs 4:23, says, keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring the issues of life. So what is Jesus and what is Solomon telling us here? He's telling us that what someone else says or does to us is not about us, it's about them. Right? Because it couldn't come out of them if it weren't in them. Couldn't come out of them if it weren't in them. So don't take personally what others say and do to you, because it really doesn't have to do with you, it has to do with them. Because it couldn't come out of them if it weren't in them. Now, it is appropriate to take what they say and bring it to the Lord and say, okay, Lord, is there any truth in what they said that I need to be aware of? Because, of course, Jesus said you can see the speck in your brother's eye, but you can't see the 2x4 hanging out of your own head, right? The plank in your own eye. So maybe they see something in me that I'm not seeing in me, but you don't take it from them, you take it from God. That's right. God, is there any truth to this? And if there is, what part of it is, or maybe all of it is? But the way they deliver the message has to do everything with them and nothing to do with you. Remember that, right? But the opposite is also true, similarly true. It doesn't matter what someone else says. It doesn't matter what someone else does. It doesn't matter how they say it and how they do it. How you respond, how I respond, has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with me, because it couldn't come out of me if it wasn't in me. That's right. Couldn't come out of me if it wasn't in me. So if I respond with, well, the only reason that I can respond with, is because, is in there, right? In order to come out. And that's a really good thing, because as we were talking about yesterday, Thursday, we have such a propensity to be deceived. We're crazy that one of the few ways that God can show us what's wrong with us is to allow circumstances and situations to come so that what's inside comes out. Right? What's inside comes out, and by this law that out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks, we can see that in those trials and so on, when it comes out, it's because it was in there. Because it was in there. Right? But we see somebody else. We're going to look at somebody else tonight. That when difficulties arose, you saw what came out. And it was goodness. Right? No matter what kind of badness was thrown at them, goodness came out. Why? Because that's what was inside. That's what was inside. Now, human love that we talked about already, human love gives in order to receive. It gives with the expectation of return back again. But when it comes to love, can I give first? Or do I have to take first? All right, you have to take first, because you can't give what you don't have. And you and I aren't the creator, and so we must first take in order to have so that we might give it away. So when it comes to love in a creature, the creature must first take in order to have it, in order to give it away. And it's true for all of God's creation. You get a seed, and the seed is put in the ground. What does the seed first do? Does it give or does it take? Well, it first takes, right? It must take of the moisture. There's an electrical reaction at germination. It must take of that electricity. It must take of the nutrients and so on that's there in the ground. And as it grows and breaks through the surface of the ground, then it takes of the sunlight, it takes of the carbon dioxide and so on, all these different things that it needs, and it takes. But it does so in order that it might do what? It might give, right? It does so that it might give. So let's just imagine that it was an orange seed and not a bean in the first picture. It grows up, and it grows up into an orange tree. And of course, an orange tree, how are you going to know that it's an orange tree? It's going to produce oranges, right? For whom does the tree produce its oranges? For something else, right? It produces the oranges for something else. How many times have you seen an orange tree eating its own oranges? Never, right? You've never seen an orange tree eating its own oranges. Even if you have oranges on the ground, it still can't eat them, still can't put its roots into them and get any good or beneficial anything out of it. If it's going to have any benefit from what it just produced, it has to be then taken by something else. Right? It might be taken by an animal or other things like that. It might be taken by bacteria or fungus or other types of things like that, or microorganisms, or even beetles and other stuff like that, and then taken, and then it's used, and then some other stuff is left behind. And eventually, it can get back into the soil in a form that the tree can take, but it has to go through other things first. So everything in creation takes first in order to give, right? So the plant first takes from the soil that it might give a flower with pollen. And the bee comes and it takes the pollen so that it might give honey. And the bear comes and it takes the honey so that it might give some dung. And the dung beetle comes along and takes that so that it might give some stuff to the worm. And the worm takes of that stuff and gives it back to the soil so that the plant can come and take from that, and so on. Right? So everything in creation first takes in order that it might give. And by doing so, each thing ministers to others without an expectation of return. Right? Without an expectation of return. The only place in all creation where that doesn't work is humans. That's right. Human nature, human beings, and human love is backwards. But when we look at divine love, let's look at that same heart that God created for us. Remember, the heart operates based upon gains and losses. We always say yes to gain. We always say no to loss. And in this heart, there's still expectations. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Okay. But God intended this heart to be combined with divine love. Not human love that we talked about last time, but divine love. And divine love takes in order to give. In fact, the law of life is taking to give. Taking to give. It's very simple. And in the old heart, when you give in order to receive, that love is an investment. We're putting something of value in somebody else in order to get greater value back. And every gift always has strings attached. And so we're afraid to accept the greater gifts because we know they come with greater obligations. Somebody might pull harder afterwards. But this love is not an investment. It's a gift. It's not an investment, it's a gift. Right? And the gift comes without strings attached. It's okay to accept the bigger gifts because they don't have bigger strings attached to them. Okay? And we play this game with God too, right? We're afraid of accepting the bigger gifts because we think the bigger gifts come with greater obligations, greater strings attached to it. We're not sure how hard he's going to pull later, right? But that's not how God operates. And in this heart, there are expectations, but the expectations are not for myself. For example, in this new heart, I still would expect my wife, Lietta, to love me. But I don't expect her to love me for my sake. I expect her to love me for her sake. Because I know that the only way for her to experience the love and the joy of God as He intended it is for her to take from Him and to give that love away. And if she withholds that love for selfish reasons, it will destroy her. It will hurt her. It will limit her. And I don't want her to be hurt. I don't want her to be destroyed. I don't want her to be limited. I don't want any of that bad stuff for her. And so for her sake, I expect her to love me, because she then gains joy in actually giving it away. And I want her to be happy. So for a desire for her happiness and her fulfillment, I do expect her to love me, but not for my sake. Right? Not for my sake. That sound odd? Yeah, it's a different perspective, right? It's a different perspective. It's a selfless perspective, right? If I take in order to give, then my gain is in the giving. My gain is in the giving. That's where the gain comes. And the more I can give, the more gain I have. The less I give, the less gain I have, but I can still remain in gain if I'm limited in my giving by the fact that they don't receive as much. Right? They're not willing to accept as much. If they're not willing to accept as much, then I can't give as much as I would like to, and so my gain in giving is limited some from that standpoint. And if that's true, which it is, then that means that we can limit God's joy. Because does God not get joy from giving? Yeah, absolutely. He has joy from giving as well. So if we're unwilling to accept the bigger gifts, then we actually limit God's joy because He can't give it, because we won't accept it, right? For the joy that was set before Him, He endured the cross, despising its shame, right? The greatest gift that God could give was the gift of His Son, which was painfully tortuous, but yet was the greatest joy because it was the greatest gift that He could give. Because that's how selfless love functions. That's how selfless love operates. If my gain is to give, then my loss is to keep it to myself, to withhold for selfish purposes. Now, you could withhold for their good, right? Not for selfish purposes, but for selfless purposes. For example, you might have somebody that is, let's say they continually come to you and asking for money, but they're using the money in order to buy drugs, right? And so they're using that to destroy themselves, to harm themselves. Well, it's appropriate for their good to limit that so that they don't use the gift in order to destroy themselves, right? You could do so in other different ways, give them food cards or other types of things like that so that you can help them out in ways that are beneficial, but they don't necessarily use it in order to destroy themselves, and so on. But when I start to limit what I'm giving because of self, because I'm protecting myself, because I don't want them to take advantage of me, and so on and so forth, now I'm back in the old heart. Now I'm back in the old way of the selfish giving in order to receive, and caught up in all of the chaos and the horribleness that is. So let's go through a story that helps us to understand this a little better. And those of you next week, when you go out there, there's I don't know, maybe some of you picked it up. There's a little booklet called The Great Opportunity Department Store. I'm going to tell you a little bit of it, paraphrase it, kind of. So let's imagine that you have this store that gets built near your home. It's a huge store, absolutely huge store. You've never seen anything like it. I mean, Walmart is just a department inside this thing. And it's got everything that you can think of. It is so big, there are not shopping carts, there are shopping cars that you drive along in here. And the building goes on for several miles. I mean, it's got everything that you can think of. You've got new vehicles, you've got building materials, you've got, grocery stores, you've got, and it's so, I mean, like, there's fruit in there, you don't even have a clue how to eat it. You got to Google the thing, you look up on YouTube to figure out how you even prepare this stuff. Do you eat the skin? Do you not eat the skin? Do you cut the thing open? How do you, and whatever. It's got everything you can think of. Oh, this is great. And because it's so big, it has such buying power that it gets the prices cheap. It's even cheaper than Walmart, but it has like Macy's quality stuff. It's great. Oh, life is grand. And so you go there and you go shopping and so on, and you tell all of your friends about this, and it's so great. And one day you're shopping and you've got your stuff and they're checking it out, and click, blip, blip, and you're doing this thing. And just then the manager walks up and says, "Did you forget your wallet?" Yeah. Sorry, I must have, I don't know, it's got to be back home. Is it okay if I get the stuff and leave it off to the side and go run home, grab the wallet, come back and pay for it? He says, "Oh, you don't have to do that." He hands you a store card. And he says, "Here, anytime you need to use it, use it." So he hands it to the clerk swipes it, hands you your receipt, you're good to go. You're like, and you're going to turn to thank him, but he's gone, off taking care of something else. And you're like, "Oh, what did he mean?" Right? Well, that was really cool. That was neat, but what did he mean? And so you come back and you keep shopping like you normally do, and another day you forget your wallet, but you happen to have the card with you, and so you're there checking out, and you're like, I don't know, should I? So you hand it to the clerk, and the clerk takes it, swipes the card, and gives you your receipt, and you've got your stuff good to go. You know what's really nice about this card? You don't get any bill. Yeah, different kind of store card. And so you're just, this is really, really interesting. And so you're walking out, and the manager's talking with somebody else, dealing with something, and he kind of looks up, and you get a passing glance of him, and it's weird because it's almost like you can tell by the look on his face he knows what you did, and it's okay. You kind of head out, and you're just like, this is like weird. And so you come back another day, and you're shopping, and you get there to check out, and now you're like, bank card, store card, bank card, store card, store card. And you use it, and they swipe the card, and they hand you your receipt, and you got your stuff, you're good to go. This is really awesome. Really awesome. This is really awesome. And so, you tell your friends about it, you take them shopping with you, and so on and so forth. Oh, you can get whatever you want. And when one day you're distracted and you go through the red light and bam! Or like, Thursday, we were heading home. Headed up 165. Tree fell across 165. All lanes of traffic. And in the dark and the rain and everything, car ran right into it, split the thing in half, airbags and all of that kind of stuff. And still, even the remains of the tree, the bumper's still underneath the remains of the tree right now. So you have an accident, and boom, car is totaled. Oh man, what are we gonna do? I'm not ready for that. So you end up back at the store. And you're wandering around with your shopping car, and you go past. Oh, hang on, they've got an auto department, auto dealer. Any variety you want, it's there. I mean, it's huge. This place is huge. So you're thinking, oh well, maybe you're looking for Toyota. Okay, so you stop by at the Toyota place and go in there and you look, and the prices, the full price of the vehicle, tax tag, and all that kind of stuff right there on the window. No high pressure salesman or anything like that. Just they're helpful and so on. And so you pick out a vehicle. They said, hey, we can insure it for you too as well. We got the insurance, we got that too. And it's probably a lot better than your insurance company as far as rates are concerned. I really wish. And so you look at it, and indeed, it's several $100s less every 6 months for your insurance bill. Oh man, score! And so you get the vehicle, you get the insurance, sign up for all of that, and it's time to pay. And you pull out the store card, and they swipe the store card. They give you all your paperwork. You're good to go. No way. Life is just, wow. And so, you're looking at this and you're going, this is just great. This is unreal. And so now with your new vehicle, you're downtown sometime, you stopped at a red light, and you're there, and there's somebody begging off on the side, and so you do the usual, don't connect, no eye contact, because if you get eye contact, they might come near the vehicle. And then you remember, the card. I've got the card. Oh, so now eye contact. And so you call her over, and she's got a, cardboard sign that says, need help, God bless, And so you roll down the window. She's expecting a handout, and you tell her, hey, get in. I'm going to take you shopping. You'll get anything you want. And so, against her better judgment, she gets in her vehicle, and you go head back off to the store. And so you go there, and on the way you find out that, well, she was married, and she's got 3 children, and she and the children are living at the shelter downtown. Children are at school or daycare right now, and she's begging because she doesn't have any other options. She didn't have any career skills, but she got married, and her husband was the breadwinner for the family, and he came down sick. And it ended up being terminal, and they had a lot of medical bills and everything with it, and so she lost the home and everything. Just one of those bad stories, and you really feel for her. So you take her to the store and you tell her, get anything you need. Anything you need. So she's a little bit, just like you were at the beginning, she's a little reluctant. She doesn't want to presume on your generosity and so on and so forth. So she picks out some things here and some things there, and all the kids would like this and so on. And so you go and you check out with that, and as you're checking out, you use the store card. Right? And it works. They hand the receipt and so on. You get the stuff, and you head out. And you take her back to the shelter, and she's grateful for for your generosity and so on, and taking her shopping, and so you leave, but you can't get her off your mind. You just keep thinking about her and thinking about her situation, and another day you're there at the store and you're wandering around, and you pass another department, the real estate department, and you're like, this place is huge. I don't remember passing that before. So you turn around, go back, and you check it out. Oh, they got all sorts of property. They got land. They've got commercial properties. They got residential properties. They've got they got trailer homes. They've got regular manufactured homes. They've got all sorts of stuff. And so you tell the people there about the the story, and that you would she's a single mother with 3 children, and it would be great to be able to have a place, a home. And they're like, oh, hey, we got inroads with the State Department and all that kind of stuff. We can get it all set up. You can pay for it. We can put the title and everything in your name, and then you can bring her in, and we can switch things around. and just get it over into hers. Oh, well, hey, what would you need? Well, I don't know. Let's look for a 4-bedroom home. Then we've got a 2-story one over here. It's on the end of a cul-de-sac, so no traffic. It's a safe place for the kids to be. A couple acres of property with it, and so on. Oh, that'd be great. And so you get it, and you pay for it with a card, with the store card. That's right. And you pay for it with a store card, and then you're thinking about it, and you're like, hang on, how is she going to get there? She needs a vehicle. So you go back to the auto place, right? And you tell them the story, and they're the same thing. Yeah, we can get it all taken care of, and do it in your name, and so on, and then we can get it switched over to her, and so you hatch the plan, right? And so she's single mother, 3 children. Minivan. Let's get a minivan for her. Leather seats, because you'll wipe that stuff up when they make a mess, and so on. And so, so you get one, and you purchase it, and you pay for it with the store card, right? You get the car delivered to the house. They tell you that there's an interior decorating department that's down the way there. You go talk to them, and so you go talk to them, and now you've got a new home, but you don't have anything in it. You got to furnish it. And so they'll have an associate come and meet you there. You'll do a walkthrough through the home, and they can make suggestions and recommendations for the things to get. And so you do. You meet them there, and you go. And she's like, well, you need a floor mat here. It'd be nice to have a welcome sign on the door. You go inside. Let's do a kitchen set, dining room set right here. Mother, 4 children, and it's 6 places. That would be good. And they go to the kitchen. Oh, well, let's get the good appliances, because the kids might be hanging all over stuff. And so you get down the dishwasher and that and the other thing, and you just go from room to room and so on, and the person looks in the backyard and says, how about a playground? Yeah, that'd be great. Kids would love it. And so you go back to the store, and with all of this tallied up, and you pay for it with the store card. That's right, you pay for it with the store card. And then all of a sudden, trucks and everything start going there and putting it together, and their associate is there to make sure that everything gets in the right place and everything. And then, a day or so later, after everything is there and assembled and put together, you go back to the shelter, and she's there. And she's got the children with her this time. And so you tell her, let's go shopping. I want to take you shopping, And she's like, oh, but, I don't want to burden you or anything like that. Oh, no burden at all. And so you take her back to the store, and the kids are with her this time, and you tell them, get anything you want. And the kids are like, woohoo, they want to go get everything. She's trying to keep them under control. No, she doesn't want them to presume upon your generosity either. And so they, they get stuff and whatever, and you check out, and you pay for it with the store card. And then you go back, but you don't go back the same way you came, right? You kind of wander through a different part of town, and as you're wandering through the different part of town, it's a nice neighbor. She says, oh, are we going to your house? No. Do you like the neighborhood? Yeah, it looks like a nice neighborhood, safe, and so on. You turn down a road, and at the very end, there's a house and a vehicle, and the house has a big bow on the door, and it has a big bow on the top of the vehicle, and you pull out into the front of the house, and you turn to her and you tell her, that's yours. That's yours. She looks at you with this, like, what do you mean? What do you mean that's mine? That's your house, and that's your car. I got them for you. And, the puzzled look is really puzzled look right now, and you pull out the keys. Here's the house key, and here's the car key. Here, and the car flat, and the doors open, and so on. The kids run in there, and so on, and she's still just, and then it breaks on her. What's actually happening? And tears and all of that kind of stuff, and you go walking with her, and you go to the front door and say, here, open it up. and she opens the door, and she steps inside, and it's furnished. It's perfect. The kids come in, and they look through the glass door in the back, and they see the playground, and they're out there and swinging and sliding and doing that stuff, and she's going from room to room, laughing and crying, and she can't believe it. Right? How much did it cost you to take her shopping? Zero, right? It wasn't yours, right? You took from somewhere else in order that you might give, right? You took to give. It didn't cost you anything because it wasn't yours. It just took time, and you had to make the choice to do so. But in taking to give, it gave you joy. It gave you reason and meaning and so on and so forth, right? It was great. But what gave you the greater joy? To take her shopping or to get her the house and the car? The house and the car, right? There was greater joy in giving the greater gift. The more you can give, the more joy and meaning and purpose there is in being able to take to give. Now, did the house cost you anything? No. The car cost you anything? No. Just some time, right, which doesn't belong to you anyways, and a choice to do it. But in participating with that, taking to give, comes your joy, comes your purpose, comes your meaning, and the greater you can give, the greater joy you have. That is the law of life. That is selfless love, taking from the source, which is who? God. Taking from God and giving to others. Right? Not for yourself, for them, but in doing so, you have joy, you have purpose, you have meaning. It's beautiful, right? So, but what happens if we keep it to ourselves? You got the card. You can go to the store shopping anytime you want to. You can buy anything you want. You can just get it and use the card, and you can take it home, and you can accumulate. You can have your own house. You can have your own car. You can have your own stuff. You want the greatest sound system, you can get it. If you want this, you can have it. You can want that, you can have it, and so on and so forth. What happens after you've bought everything that you possibly could for yourself? Yeah, that's right. You're miserable. You're absolutely miserable. You've got all this stuff in the world, and you're miserable, and you don't have a purpose to your life. Right? That's what selfishness does. It makes you miserable, and you don't have a purpose to your life. It's absolutely opposite what God created us for. In this world, how do we keep something? Well, all right, we're going to get to that. Spiritual answers, right? In this world, you keep something by holding on to it. Isn't that at least what we try? Yeah, right? You want to, let's say you got some gold coins. How are you going to hold on to the gold coins? You're going to hold on to them. You might put them in a safe. You might put them in a safety deposit box or something like that. You got to keep other people away from it because they might steal it and so on and so forth. But what does the word say? In John 12:25, Jesus said, "He who loves his life will lose it, and he who hates his life in this world will keep it for life eternal." That means, and God is trying to tell us, this is one of the ways God's trying to tell us, you're crazy. Right? You're crazy because you think you can keep something by holding on to it. But in reality, if you hold on to it, what happens? You lose it. Right? You hold on to your life, you're going to lose your life. The only way that you can gain your life is to give it away. That's right. In God's kingdom, in His plan, His selfless plan, the only way you can keep something is to give it away, because the moment you hold on to it, you lose it. You lose it. And He doesn't want you to lose it. He wants you to have it, so therefore you need to give it away. Give it away. But you don't give away what's yours, you give away what's his. You got to come and take it first in order to have it to give it away. So what about God? Can he keep to himself? Does he withhold for selfish reasons? Oh, you've been bad and you haven't behaved and you haven't believed, and you haven't all this kind of stuff, so God's going to withhold from you? No. He says in Matthew 5:45, he makes his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, sends rain on the just and the unjust. Why? Because that's who he is. He's a selfless God. He has selfless love. He does it because of who he is, but he does it for us, and he loves us regardless of how we respond and how crazy we are. It's about him and his character and a reflection of what's in his heart. That's why he gives what he does and how he does. And his giving of those blessings is independent of how you respond to them. He'll still send the sun and the rain on the good and the not good, right? The same is true for you and I when Christ lives in our hearts by faith. Our reward is secured by giving it away. The law of self-sacrifice is the law of self-preservation. The husbandman preserves his grain by casting it away. So in human life, to give is to live. That's right. To give is to live. The life that will be preserved is the life that is freely given in service to God and man. Those who, for Christ's sake, sacrifice their life in this world will keep it unto life eternal. It's beautiful. Beautiful. In this new heart, do you need acceptance? Yeah, you do. You need acceptance. So where are you going to go for acceptance? To God, right? He's the source of acceptance. So you go to God for acceptance and you take all the acceptance that you need. Then what do? Give it away. That's right. You accept others, right? You take the acceptance that God has given and then you go give it away. You accept others. For the moment that you withhold the acceptance, you refuse to accept others, what happens to the acceptance you took? You lose it. That's right. It's a law. It's a divine law. If you hold on to it, you lose it. The only way you can have it is to give it away. That's right. So you come to God and you take all the acceptance that you need, and then you go and you accept others. Right? Do you need belonging? Yeah, absolutely. So where do you go? You go to God and you take all the belonging that you need, right? Believing his promises and so on and so forth, and you take all of the belonging that you need, and then you give it away. You be a source of belonging for others. And in so doing, you retain it, you maintain it, it is yours, and there's purpose and there's joy and so on and so forth in it. God wanted us to have purpose. He wanted us to have joy. And so he set us up for a selfless life of taking in order to give. But when selfishness comes in and wants to hold it to myself, guess what? You lose it. That's right. Now, Jesus said in Matthew 6:15, he says, if you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. Now, how I used to read this passage as I was growing up, and how I used to understand that passage was from a selfish perspective, because that's all I knew, right? It was a selfish perspective. And so I understood God to be the biggest selfish thing out there. He was God, he was the creator, and everything was about him. Right? Everything was about him. And so if you're going to be an unforgiving ogre and not forgive somebody else, then God's going to be the biggest unforgiving ogre and not forgive you. That's how I used to read it. But then I believed that God was love, but then I believe this about God. Totally incompatible with each other. What is this saying? Well, this is simply highlighting the fact that when you hold on to something, when you withhold it, you lose it. The only way you can keep it is to give it away. So if you need forgiveness, where do you go? You go to God. He has all the forgiveness that you need. You take all the forgiveness that you need. If you want forgiveness to remain yours, what do? Give it away. That's right. You give it away. For the moment that you withhold forgiveness, what happens? You lose it. That's right. You lose it. That's all it's saying. He's not saying that God is a great big mean ogre and so on and so forth, and he's going to withhold from you if you withhold from them. He's just highlighting a law, a divine law. If you withhold it, you lose it. So give it away, right? Give it away. Be in that process of taking in order to give. By the way, if you ever forgive anybody, it's never with your own forgiveness, because you don't have any forgiveness of your own to forgive them with. It's only by His, because He's the only one that has the forgiveness, right? So we must take of His forgiveness and give it away. And we'll get more into forgiveness and bitterness and that kind of stuff later, kind of wade through that a little bit. This heart believes it's not mine. It's not mine, right? I don't have it. It's not my possession. I'm just the steward. I'm not the owner, right? This heart believes I can't produce it. I'm not the creator, I'm a creature, so therefore I must take in order to have, right? I'm dependent. And this heart believes that I am not my own to do whatever I want to with me. I was bought at a price, therefore I must glorify God in my body and my spirit, which are His, as we're told in 1 Corinthians 6, 19 and 20, right? So, what does this possibly look like in a relationship setting? So, you have a young man and you have a young woman, and they have been taking from God and giving to others. They have God as their source, and they recognize that other relationships are there as a means for them to give. Other relationships are not there for them to take from. They're there for them to give to. They take vertically and they give horizontally, right? And in taking from God and giving to others, they find their joy, their life, and so on. They're living that selfless existence and so on. And they run into each other, and God taps him on the shoulder, says, give to her, and taps her on the shoulder and says, give to him. Well, sure, it's natural. That's just what they do. And so they do, without any particular thought of anything. And it's their joy to be able to give. And when they see the joy of the other one receiving, that gives them more joy, right? And so they enjoy that. And God kind of taps them on the shoulder and says, I want you to give more. Well, you know what that is. That's like more giving, more joy. Sure, I'll give more, right? And so they do. And so more giving, more joy. And more giving, and more joy. And God says, you know what? I want this to increase. Because this relationship is going to represent me. Right? It's going to represent me. And the two of you are going to show what God is like. Right? And so there's more giving and more joy and more giving and more joy and so on and so forth. And God taps him on the shoulder and says, you know what, I want you to continue this the rest of your life. And he's like, well, hey, all right, I'm good with that. And, he kind of whispers that in her ear as well. And so he goes and he talks to Papa Bear about getting Baby Bear. There's no nervousness in that at all because God's already said, and so God's got to work on Daddy's heart too, right? And so when he goes and asks for her hand, well, sure, Father says definitely. And so he tells her what God has told him. She says, oh, God told me that too. And they're both happy to pursue that. And, the engagement goes and they get married. How much fishing did they do beforehand? None. In the old heart, the selfish heart, there's a lot of fishing. There's a lot of bait. There's a lot of hooks. There's a lot of fishing in order to get the fish and reel it in. Now there's no fishing, right? And when you get married, what changes? Yeah, in this life, everything changes. You know what happens when you get married in the unselfish life? You get to give even deeper. The giving gets deeper. it gets broader. Love continues to grow. There's a particular intimacy in the marriage relationship which is reserved for that marriage relationship that is not in any other type of relationship that humans experience, or is not supposed to be in any other relationship that that humans experience. And so there's this special intimacy, this special giving that is greater than any other expression of that giving, and in such there's greater joy in giving that intimacy to another. Not for the purpose of yourself, but for their good. But in doing so and seeing their joy from it brings you joy too. And there's a deeper joy, there's a deeper meaning, there's a deeper purpose, and so on. And it reflects God's desire for intimacy with His children, with His church, and so on, right? It's beautiful. But there's nothing that can enter that relationship to threaten it. Nothing that can enter that relationship to threaten it. Because you're not dependent upon each other. You don't see each other as the source. Each other is only the conduit, right? The pathway through which God has given His good things. The Bible says, how many good things come from God? All of them. Right? Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above and comes from the Father of heavenly lights, with whom there is no variableness nor shadow of turning. And so if there's any good that you receive through the other, it's not from them, it's only through them, it's from Him. So your dependency is not upon them, it's upon Him. So you're not dependent upon your spouse, you're dependent upon God. But there is a sharing, there is a receiving and a giving through them that is beautiful and reflects God and His character and what He wants to do with us. So let's say in that marriage relationship, God taps him on the shoulder and says, I want you to go and tell people about my love and express my love to them in another country. I want you to go do a foreign thing, and you're going to be gone for quite a while. But she needs to stay home. Okay. Is that a threat? No. Because anywhere you go in the world, your source is there. God is there, right? And you're dependent upon Him, and you're taking the love from Him, and you're giving it to others. And do you have a type of heartache from being away from your spouse that leads you to cry and pout and do all of that kind of stuff? No, you don't, right? Because that kind of crying, pouting, and whatever, when we miss somebody, actually is selfishness missing our source. But now you're not missing your source because your source is everywhere. It's God, right? You can take all that you need from Him. But when you return back into the relationship, then you can return back into that greater joy of giving and so on and so forth, and you're very happy to be back into that relationship. But you're not threatened, and the marriage is not threatened by being separated, being apart, and so on and so forth. It's an entirely different concept in the context of what we have already known. Right? God created marriage. Marriage is good. It's really good. But right now, it's really bad. Why? Because it's upside down. It's upside down from what it was intended to be. We marry people because of what we think we can get out of them. And when they don't perform the way that we would like them to, well, then we want to either fix the model or exchange the model. But when you marry somebody, not for what you might get from them, but for what you might give to them, then what can threaten that? Except that they might become selfish and walk away. You can't do anything about that. But if they're not your source and you're not dependent upon them, it doesn't break your heart. Right? For you. Your heart is broken for them. For them. That's right. So who is a perfect example of this heart in action? Jesus. Jesus was the perfect example of this heart in action. So let's take him as our example. Did Jesus believe that he possessed anything on his own? No. He said, foxes have holes, the birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. No possessions that he claimed as his own. Did he claim to produce anything on his own? No. He said in John 5:30, I can of myself do nothing. That's a remarkable statement, an absolutely remarkable statement, because you know what Jesus did in his life, but he said, I can do nothing. It's amazing what you can't do when you think you can do it, but it's equally amazing what you can do when you know you can't. Right? Upside down, backwards. We're crazy. It doesn't seem right. But that's just because we've been upside down all of our lives. Right? Did Jesus think that he was his own to do whatever he wanted to with him? No. No. He said, most assuredly I say to you, the Son can do nothing of himself, but what he sees the Father do, for whatever he does, the Son does in like manner. So he wasn't his own either. Right? So Jesus didn't possess. He didn't produce. He wasn't his own. He was the perfect UPS delivery guy. So when the package of his Father's love was brought to others, and he gave it to them, if they took that package and they threw it on the ground, they stomped on it and slammed the door, did he take it personally? No. He didn't take it personally. Because it wasn't about him. It was about his Father. He was only a delivery man of that. Did he love them? Absolutely. So did he hurt for them? Yes. If they rejected that love, walked away from it, and so on and so forth, yes, he hurt for them, but he didn't hurt for himself. It was not a selfish hurt. It was a selfless hurt that he had for them. And I'll tell you this, if you have a selfless hurt for somebody else, it will never do your body bad. Because that is thinking like God thinks. But when you take it personally and it's a selfish hurt, that will kill the body. It will. That whole process of the electrical activity of the brain and the control of different parts of the body and its function, it'll destroy it. And so many of us destroy ourselves through that. That's why we're going over this. So let's look at a few examples of Jesus in his life and how he responded in difficult circumstances that show us what this heart looks like in action. Here, when Jesus was a child, Jesus did not contend for his rights. Often his work was made unnecessarily severe because he was willing and uncomplaining. Yet he did not fail nor become discouraged. He lived above these difficulties as if in the light of God's countenance. He did not retaliate when roughly used, but bore insult patiently. Oh, beautiful. Have you ever been given work, extra work, unnecessarily? To be severe? How do you respond to that? Well, we take it personally. And we get upset and frustrated, and we complain, and we, murmur. If we have the power to do something about it, we will do something about it. If we don't have the power to do something about it, we will murmur and complain and gripe and do all of that kind of stuff mutter behind our breath, and we'll instigate some kind of little burning rebellion against the boss or whoever it is that's doing that to you. That's not Jesus. That's not how the new heart operates. The new heart is willing and uncomplaining. Oh, entirely different. In the heart of Christ, where reigned perfect harmony with God, there was perfect peace. He was never elated by applause, nor dejected by censure or disappointment. Amid the greatest opposition and the most cruel treatment, he was still of good courage. Oh. Why was he not elated by applause or dejected by censure or disappointment? Because he wasn't eating off of their buffet. So if they were, he didn't take it. Because he wasn't eating from their buffet. Because he knew that they would applaud things that were appealing to the selfish nature, and that the same ones that applauded him today would crucify him later. Same ones. as the tide of public opinion changes. Right? So he didn't take the applause from them, nor the dejection or censure he took from his father, and his father said, "This is my son in whom I am well pleased." And so he always carried the well-pleased of his father with him wherever he went, regardless of what anybody else said or did. And nothing could disturb that peace. Nothing. Do you want that? I want that. Yeah. And it's here. It's possible for each of us. It's possible, right? God came to give us the example in Jesus of what we can be in Jesus. Right? And so it's something to strive for. It's not something that happens at the beginning. It's like learning how to walk. At the beginning, up and poof. Right? Okay. Well, what does a child do? Takes the next step and then falls. And then takes the next step and maybe 2 steps and then falls, and so on. Right? So we're going to do a lot of falling in this process, but we're looking at where we're aiming for. Right? We're looking at what does it look like to actually walk this walk. The Savior's life on earth, though lived in the midst of conflict, was a life of peace. While angry enemies were constantly pursuing him, he said, "He that sent me is with me. The Father hath not left me alone, for I do always those things that please him." No storm of human or satanic wrath could disturb the calm of that perfect communion with God. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. He was now in the shadow of the cross, and the pain was torturing his heart. He knew that he would be deserted in the hour of his betrayal. He knew that by the most humiliating process to which criminals were subjected, he would be put to death. By the way, the world has not found a more torturous way to kill somebody than the cross. Anyways, we could go into descriptions of it and the physiology and the anatomy and physiology of crucifixion. It's quite disturbing. That's where you get the term excruciating. Right? That term comes from the cross, the cruce, right? Excruciating pain. It's from dying on the cross, right? So he knew that by the most humiliating process to which criminals were subjected, he would be put to death. He knew the ingratitude and cruelty of those he had come to save. He knew how great the sacrifice that he must make and for how many it would be in vain. Knowing all that was before him, he might naturally have been overwhelmed with the thought of his own humiliation and suffering. Naturally, you would think that would be what he's thinking about. I'm going to hang naked in front of my mother and my disciples and other people and all that kind of stuff, and it's going to be painful and torturous and all that, and that's going to be the top of his thoughts. But he looked upon the 12 who had been with him as his own, and who after his shame and sorrow and painful usage were over would be left to struggle in the world. His thoughts of what he himself must suffer were ever connected with his disciples. He did not think of himself. His care for them was uppermost in his mind. So even in the midst of the torture of becoming sin for us and the cross that's going to come, Jesus still was not thinking about himself. He was thinking about them. Selfless all the way, right? Christ never murmured. Never uttered discontent, displeasure, or resentment. Start putting the mirror up now. How does my reflection do against Jesus' reflection? Never murmured, never uttered discontent, displeasure, resentment. All right, well, it's not lining up very well right now. He was never disheartened, discouraged, ruffled, or fretted. He was patient, calm, and self-possessed under the most exciting and trying circumstances. All his works were performed with a quiet dignity and ease, whatever commotion was around him. Applause did not elate him. He feared not the threats of his enemies. He moved amid the world of excitement, of violence, and crime as the sun moves above the clouds. Human passions and commotions and trials were beneath him. He sailed like the sun above them all, yet he was not indifferent to the woes of men. His heart was ever touched with the sufferings and necessities of his brethren. as though he himself was the one afflicted. He had a calm inward joy, a peace which was serene. His will was ever swallowed up in the will of his Father. Not my will, but thine be done, was heard from his pale and quivering lips. Oh, that's a beautiful Jesus. So unlike me. I really hate this passage, but I really like this passage because I really like the picture of what it shows Jesus, but I really hate the picture that it reveals in me because I am just not that, right? But I determine to be that by God's grace. And only by his grace can it be possible. One of his officers, filled with wrath as he saw Annas' silence, struck Jesus on the face, saying, "Answerest thou the high priest so?" Christ calmly replied, "If I have spoken evil, bear witness of the evil. But if well, why smitest thou me?" He spoke no burning words of retaliation. His calm answer came from a heart sinless, patient, and gentle, that would not be provoked. You know what provocation is? It's spilling your cup over. We call them buttons, right? You got buttons, somebody punches your buttons. When they punch your buttons, guess what happens? You blow up. The cup spills over, what's inside comes flowing out. Right? Guess what? Jesus had no buttons. No buttons. Right? Jesus had no buttons. You could do anything to Jesus and you could never get him riled up and so on and so forth and get some bad response out of him because all that could come out of him was in him and it was all good. That's right. It was all good. While the degrading oaths were fresh upon Peter's lips and the shrill crowing of the cock was still ringing in his ears, the Savior turned from the frowning judges and looked full upon his poor disciple. At the same time, Peter's eyes were drawn to his master. In that gentle countenance he read deep pity and sorrow, but there was no anger there. The sight of that pale, suffering face, those quivering lips, that look of compassion and forgiveness pierced his heart like an arrow. You know what made the difference between Peter's conversion and Peter's suicide? No. The difference between Peter's conversion and Peter's suicide. He was converted. He did not commit suicide, but he was on the verge of committing suicide. You know what the thing made the difference between the two? It was the look of Jesus, the look on his face when Peter failed and their eyes connected in that courtyard after the cock crowed twice and Peter looks up and sees Jesus, and just before he gets punched in the face or something like that, and Jesus looks at Peter with that look, no anger. It was a look of compassion and forgiveness. If it had been a look of anger, disappointment, so on and so forth, Peter would have gone out and followed Judas. But it was of compassion and forgiveness. And he went and was broken so that Christ could put him back together later. While the soldiers were doing their fearful work, nailing Jesus to the cross, Jesus prayed for his enemies, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." His mind passed from his own suffering to the sin of his persecutors and the terrible retribution that would be theirs. No curses were called down upon the soldiers who were handling him so roughly. No vengeance was invoked upon the priests and rulers who were gloating over the accomplishment of their purpose. Christ did what? He pitied them. He pitied them. In their ignorance and guilt. He knew we were crazy. So crazy, we would crucify the very one who came to save us. He didn't condemn us for being crazy. He pitied us for being crazy. Same today. He doesn't condemn us for being crazy. He pities us for being crazy. And he still says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. It's not just amazing to us, it was even amazing to angels. With amazement, the angels beheld the infinite love of Jesus, who, suffering the most intense agony of mind and body, thought only of others, and encouraged the penitent soul to believe. And through his life, we're told, though calumny and persecution were heaped upon him from the cradle to the grave, they called forth from him only the expression of forgiving love. Why only forgiving love came out? Because it was forgiving love that was inside. And no matter how you knocked him over, that's what came spilling out. Right? Oh, yeah, okay. Well, we'll do this. So what about you and I? Christ did not fail, neither was he discouraged. And his followers, what about us? Well, that was possible for him, but not impossible for us, and so we're off the hook. His followers are to manifest a faith of the same enduring nature. They are to despair of nothing and to hope for everything. How can you despair of nothing and hope for everything? It's because you're taking from him as your source. And he's always available. And you can always be full. Right? If the works of the ambassadors of Christ are wrought in God, they will not be elated by praise from human lips. Neither will they be depressed because they think they're not appreciated. Why? Because the word to Jesus is the same word to us. This is my beloved child in whom I am well pleased. And we live by that word, not the word of others around us. We take from his buffet, not from their buffet. If you had the Spirit of Christ, you would not notice slights and make much of fancied injuries. Why? Because his Spirit does not notice slights and does not make much of fancied injuries. And that Spirit only lives one kind of life, and if it lives in us, it lives the same life that it lived in him. Right? It is the love of self that destroys our peace. It's true. So true. While self is all alive, we stand ready continually to guard it from mortification and insult. But when we are dead, and our life is hid with Christ in God, we shall not take neglects and slights to heart. We shall be deaf to reproach and blind to scorn and insult. Do you want that freedom? Yeah, I want that freedom. How many people out there can you change? Not one of them. So if we're dependent upon them and they're all messed up, guess what? We're all messed up too, right? So the solution for this is not fixing others, it's fixing me. And it's about a change in perspective. It's a paradigm shift. It's allowing God to turn us right side up again when we've been upside down all the time. Right? He wants to cure us of the deception, of the craziness. Because it's the deception and the craziness that creates all the pain and the sorrow and the heartache and the rejection and all of that kind of stuff that's going on. And he never intended that for us. That was because of Satan's stuff and his temptations, and we fell for it, and then, his world became ours, and it's not a good world. But God's world is. It is. The universal identity crisis of humanity. Identity is really important because it determines everything. The universal identity crisis of humanity is that we believe we're God. We were talking about that the last time, right? We believe we're God. And because we believe we're God, all sorts of stuff comes in. Because we're God, we try to control time. So when time starts getting away from us, and we think that we should be able to control it, and then we can't, guess what? We get stressed. Right? We think we should be able to control circumstances and situations. Can God? Yeah, God can. Can we? No, we can't. But when we think we're God, we try to do so, and so we try to control circumstances and situations, and when we can't, guess what? Stress. When we think we're God, we don't go to the source first. We try to give first because we think we're God and then receive back again. And thinking that we're God, we become slaves to others, and all sorts of chaos comes into the whole process. What is the true core identity for all of us? that is to replace that false identity. You know what the true core identity for all of us is? I'm a child of God. Right? That's the true thing. Every other identity that you adopt is a false one. Americans tend to adopt the identity that I am what I do. Right? So if I ask you, who are you? Most Americans will tell me, when I ask that question, most of them will tell me what they do. I'm a nurse, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a the other thing, and so on and so on, or I'm a mother, and so on. The second identity that we identify by, who you're related to. Right? I'm a mother, I'm a this or that, or I'm a mother, I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, I'm a this or whatever. Right? We identify by our production and by our possessions, relationships with others. But guess what? Those identities can be taken away. Because you can come to the point where you can't do the thing that you were doing before, and then who are you? Or you can come to the point where you lose all of those relationships that you identify yourself by, and then who are you? But you can never lose this one because it's not dependent upon you, it's dependent upon Him, and He never changes. He calls you His child, He makes you His own, and that doesn't change. And in this heart, which understands that it's a creature and not God, it's free. It's free. Because I'm no longer dependent upon you for my gains and losses. My gains and losses are dependent on whether I give or whether I withhold. And that's my choice. And so I'm free to gain or I'm free to lose. Right? I pray, God, we don't choose to lose, because then when we do, we're right into the old heart, and it automatically is there and taking over, and everything in that old heart is there. So, the situation we find ourselves in on the left with the human love and giving to receive, that's because of the deception. That's because of the lie of the enemy that came in at the Garden of Eden, and every one of us have been born with it. Every one of us have grown up in it. Every one of us have experienced it. That is reality as far as we see it. But it's all because of a deception. What God created us for and what is real is on the right side. That's how He created us, with the law of life. To take from Him in order to give, recognizing that we're the creature, not the creator. We are a child of God. We are not God Himself. And our joy comes from the giving, not from the receiving. The receiving or the taking is only a means in order to give. But life comes in taking to give. You need acceptance, take it from Him, give it to others. You need belonging, take it from Him, give it to others. You need forgiveness, take it from Him, give it to others. You need security, take it from Him, give it to others. You need anything, take it from Him, give it to others. And that's where you'll find life and peace and joy, and nothing can disturb that. Nothing. And if you want to know what it looks like in the final product, you look at Jesus. Because He came to show us what the final product looks like. Now, don't get discouraged at the beginning, because at the beginning, when you try this thing out, you'll find out you'll fall flat on your face. You're like, oh, it doesn't work. It's like a little baby saying that walking doesn't work, right, when it begins trying. Oh, no, it does. But you got to get back up. And then when you fall again, you got to get back up. And when you fall again, you get back up. And each time you fall, you're back in the old heart. And when you get back up, you're in the new heart. And as time goes on, you spend more and more time in the new heart, and you spend less and less time in the old heart. And you begin to reflect Christ and live that experience of that Christ-like experience more and more consistently. Right? That's what God wants for you, because He wants to set you free. Wants to set you free. I took a little too much time. I apologize for that. Questions? Any questions? We're going to get a microphone to you, because there's people that'll be wanting to know what your question was when it's...
I'm pretty loud though.
Yeah, but...
So when people say hurtful criticisms to us, how can I say it? When people say hurtful criticisms to us and make us feel like we're lower than they are in any way, like spiritually or anything like that, what would you say is in them to say stuff like that?
Pride, right? So there's a pride, insecurity, right? So an individual who is insecure, then they seek to try to put others down so that they can feel better or more elevated. So usually your bully in school is somebody that has been endowed with some physical capabilities, but somebody who also at the same time feels pretty small themselves emotionally, and they're very insecure. And so they use the bullying in order to try to help them to feel more secure, to try to convince themselves that they're better than others, and so on and so forth. Right? So that tends to be a background behind it. Somebody else can always say what they want to say. But the only way that what they say will hurt us is if we take it and we eat it. Right? We believe it. The eating is believing, right? So if we take it and we believe it, then we've eaten it, it becomes ours, and now no longer is it something that they said, it's something that we think and we believe. It's not what they say that damages us. But when we take it, we believe it, and it's a lie. Right? If it's a lie, and we take it, and we believe it, and we continue chewing on it. We take the gum, and we just keep chewing on it, chewing on it, chewing on it. That's what causes the damage. Right? And so that old phrase, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. It's true if you don't believe the words. But then there's the other one, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will crush my soul. That's true too, if you believe them. Right? So what do you believe? Who do you believe? Vitally important. Jesus believed his Father, he didn't believe anyone else. And so he took what was from his Father, and he had a peace that was undisturbable. I don't know if that's really a word or not. But anyways, I made it up if it's not. My daughter, the editor, will correct me later. Anyway, so yeah, he had a peace that could not be disturbed. There you go. Right? And that's what he wants for us to have as well. He wants us to believe him, not them. Now, we are messed up, and so some of what people tell us might be true. Right? Might be true. You know, like you're stuck up, or you're really conceited, or you're this or you're that, the other thing. They might say it in a nasty way and so on and so forth, but then we bring those things to God and we say, okay, God, is that real? Is it true? And God might say, well, yeah, it is. And then we go, okay. So there's one of those areas in my life that I wasn't aware of. It was brought out. The Lord confirmed that it was the case. And now I take it because God says it's true. Now God isn't condemning me because of that. Now we can work on it. Great. There's another area where we can learn to walk. We can overcome by the grace of God and so on and so forth. Right? That when we take it from them with the attitude that they give it, it's destructive. Right? Any other questions? Yeah, well, you know, it's a paradigm shift. It is. It's really difficult to. It took me time. You know, when I first heard this, and then mulling over it and going over it again and studying it out and so on and so forth, and it really took me time to start seeing how crazy I was and how backwards I had things and so on, and to start seeing things from a different perspective. Yeah.
My comment would be, when I read the Bible a lot, so I hear what you're saying, yet I'm not there. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So when people come at you with these things, if you're having trouble not letting it penetrate, it's more of a comment, and then you can tell me what you think.
Mm-hmm.
Then what I would say or what I would think would be to take it to the Lord. In other words, try not to let it penetrate you and understand where it's coming from. It's not coming from God. You know, it's coming from what I would say a bad table and a good table. You know it's coming from the bad table or the bad side or the enemy, not the person, but the enemy.
Right.
So therefore, take it to the Lord and ask the Lord to help you,
Mm-hmm.
not let it penetrate you, and help you overcome and help you understand. And if there is any truth in it, you know, to enlighten you or show you if you're lacking in an area, to help you to understand where you're lacking and help you to, you know where you need to change things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, help you not let that stuff penetrate you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? To be an overcomer, to learn how to be an overcomer.
Right.
And at the same time, pray for the person that's saying it to you, because they need prayer too. You know, only God can work with them. You can't really say much to them to help them because they're not in a mental state or whatever to receive you at that time. They're really kind of spouting at you, and usually they're not in a state to hear what you have to say. They're more or less telling you what they think.
Right.
So at the time, you can only really pray for them.
Absolutely. Monday. I said Tuesday, but Monday. Monday. When the things get through and it becomes a part of my life and it is a part of the hell that I live, how do we go about letting go of the baggage? Right? How do we get rid of the baggage that's gotten through? The arrows have been shot, the shield didn't catch it, right? This is the shield, and when the shield is really functioning the way that it should, then the arrows aren't going to get through. But when the arrows do get through, then how do you heal from the arrow hits? That's going to be Monday night. We're going to be talking about how do we get rid of the baggage, right? And it's so profound and yet so simple, and it's always been there, yet we haven't seen it for what it really is. So we're going to look at it with new eyes on Monday so that we might see that and have that as part of our arsenal for healing and recovery and so on and so forth. Yeah. Yeah. So that will be Monday night. All right. Well, let us pray, and then we can get on our way. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you. You are an awesome God. And Lord, thank you for an amazing picture that you give to us of selfless love in the life of Jesus. And thank you for the picture of this new heart. For if we never see its existence, we will never know what we're aiming for. And now, Lord, we do. And we know that it's impossible for us to get there ourselves. We're crazy. And we can't even trust in this computer, this mind of ours, to figure it out right, because the mind itself is full of viruses, per se. And it's like trying to get a virus removal software to fix the viruses on the computer, but the software itself is full of viruses. It'll never work. And so we cannot trust in ourselves to pull ourselves out. And so we must have a Savior. Lord, we thank you that you came as the Savior. And so, Lord, we ask for you to save us, to open our eyes, help us to see as things really are, and may the truth set us free indeed. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.